Welcome to Point Blank. This is your host, Panama Crypto. Today our guest is Trip, or better known as CryptoISO. He's a photographer, prolific leverage trader, and former energy analyst. Welcome, CryptoISO. Very happy to have you on Point Blank.
Thanks, man. It's great to be here. I think we originally connected because of some drone footage or just photography. I think there's the creative mindset was the connection at first. So glad to be on the podcast with you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here. So let's get starting. Can you tell us who CryptoISO is in real life?
Yeah. So I feel like I could sit here for 5 hours and maybe tell you only a couple of years of my life, but it's become somewhat of an elevator pitch and just telling people because they're curious, because I would say that my background and my choice of profession and the path that I've taken to kind of get where I am is unorthodox. But I grew up on the East Coast. I went to a liberal arts college. I went into finance right after school. I started in equity research. I worked on a team with 6 analysts, and we were covering the industrial infrastructure sector. So I got a pretty good taste of what the equity research profession is all about, right? Starting as an associate and, just sink or swim type mentality. So I was kind of working for 3 or 4 different analysts, and we were on call for anything that came up, right? So if a company reported earnings or if they had a press release that came out, and, in research, you're kind of the first responder in the sense that you need to be on top of that because you need to get that to the sales force, because that's ultimately going to be driving kind of the revenue and trading volume. You want to be first in that regard. So it took a bit getting used to, but, kind of being thrown into the mix. That was like the first test of, call it, adult life after college, right? And so I quickly adapted to that and spent a year in research. I did a stint in sales after that. I actually switched companies. At that time, I was covering a lot of different sectors, starting with, semiconductors, financials. This was kind of during the Dodd-Frank time, so there was a lot of regulatory stuff going on with that. And we had hired a energy team, and I started getting really interested in energy. And then I became part of their team and actually eventually switched back over to my old firm and covered a different sector of energy. So early on, I was in the financial services sector from 2008 to just past 2013. And then I kind of transitioned more to a creative career path, and I started DJing. I think a lot of people on Twitter, you yourself know that I like to share music sometimes when I've had a lot of White Claw on the weekends. And that's kind of where No Sheep came from. It's also like a life mentality, whereas don't follow the herd. It's, very true in trading, and that's kind of the mindset I take with that. But I DJ'd in New York City for a while, and so here we are. We've gone from finance to DJing, and I had mentioned on another podcast, I had left New York. I went to New Zealand. I went on a trip to New Zealand. That was really where I got in touch with my creative mindset. So that's where I got into photography. That's where I got into flying drones. I had one of the original DJI Phantoms with a GoPro and a gimbal. I remember having to put I think it was a quarter on the back of it to balance it. Look at the drone technology today. It's so much easier to use. I think you can relate to that. And I went to New Zealand. Shortly after I got back from New Zealand, I moved to California. So I love surfing. I wanted to go out there to pursue the creative career path of photography and videography. And the whole time I was shooting as much footage as I could, whether it be doing real estate photography or I was just going down to the wedge with my camera and learning how to shoot in the water. And California was a really interesting experience because when I was there, I worked at some startups, one of them, GoPro accessory company. And so as I'm kind of going through this journey and this path of my life, not really sure what do I want to do at this point, but I'm getting all these really interesting experiences, and it's helping me to kind of hone in on what it is that I'm good at and what do I like doing, right? Because one of the reasons I left finance was because it was something that I just didn't enjoy it, alongside the fact that the financial services industry was kind of deteriorating before my eyes. And so as I was in California, working for these startups, I built a startup myself with a friend of mine from home. It was a adventure sports kind of online platform, right? So I love skiing, I love surfing, I love kite surfing, all these fishing, all these things, but I want other people to be able to do it, right? So my friend and I created a platform, and it was to basically become kind of the Airbnb or Uber of adventure sports. And we started with heli skiing. And so again, I took my creative, mindset and the things that I had learned from that trip in New Zealand, and we started making content around skiing. And so whether starting an Instagram account, I gotta take a sip of my claw.
Fucking hate you, man. We don't get those here.
Really?
Yeah. Not
Hopefully
yet.
it'll make it there. So
Eventually, yeah.
okay. So yeah, then we started to sign a bunch of different operators onto the platform, and it became a real business. And I had been going heli skiing multiple times a year to British Columbia and Alaska. And then we eventually launched kiteboarding. So those destinations were more in the British Virgin Islands. We went to places like Sardinia, Corsica, and we were just shooting content to promote these adventure experiences with these operators, right? And so these are all things I love to do. These are all skills that I acquired over time, whether it be in New Zealand or just using my camera on any vacation I went on. And we just built businesses around it. And it was a really cool time during my life because we were monetizing it, had some money from finance left over, and just I was enjoying life. And that was an important aspect to my well-being and just being happy at that time. And so eventually I moved back to the East Coast from California, and that was to work on some fundraising efforts within the startup, as well as try to jumpstart my photography business. So alongside all of this, I had been taking my own photos. I've always been interested in photography, and
So you
alongside,
so you
sorry,
basically monetize all your hobbies?
yes, pretty much. And now crypto is going to be one of them. Sorry. So I had just been kind of taking advantage of the things that I was good at and monetizing them. So I have a photography business on the side. I have this startup company, and one of the trips that we were going on to kind of do the kiteboarding operator down in the British Virgin Islands, I met an individual there who owned a couple kiteboarding yachts, and he had the vision of making a kiteboarding movie. And we shot a edit for his boat. Now it's a 54-foot kiteboarding catamaran. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to make you an edit and we're going to try to sell this. And they hired me on the side. It was for very little money. And so I turned around that video for him in, I don't know, like 6 days. And I remember I sent it to him, and he called me no less than 10 minutes later and said, hey, do you want to shoot my movie? And so I thought about it, and I knew that he had been wanting to make a movie, like a legit Hollywood movie about kiteboarding. And I said, I don't know if I have the capacity to do it because I shot that, small edit for you with a drone, my DSLR, and some GoPros. And then I thought to myself, and I said, you know what? You just made all the connections for you to be able to do that in California when you live there, because I met all the big production guys. I worked with them on a couple different projects. And so I called him back and I said, yep, we could do it. So ultimately, I ended up hiring a 13-person crew from California. And so we flew all these people out to the Outer Banks, North Carolina. And so that was one of the bigger projects that I've ever done. But the reason I tell you this is because the whole time on the first shoot, when I was with the camera crew, they had Bitcoin charts up the whole time. And, this is like early 2017. And I was like, what is this? And what are you guys looking at? And, coming from the finance background, rather conservative kind of look on, I guess, call it monetary policy, I was a skeptic at first. And then, I had dinner with a couple of the guys who had been in this for a long time. And I just started to learn more about it. And after that shoot, I went home and I picked up the book, The Age of Cryptocurrency, and I read it. And I really just started learning about the space and how it trades, and is this something that I want to spend my time on? And from there, from that film shoot and everything that I've done in terms of going from finance to DJing, going to New Zealand, going to California, starting my own startups, my photography business, and then doing this film shoot, a 2-year movie project, like that's what got me into crypto. So I just
so basically you had your lifetime all season on 2017.
Yes. Yeah. It was quite a time to enter. And, my brother was trading it at the time. So we were talking about it constantly. I started off trading just Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then I got into the altcoins and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it consumed my life. And, I still was doing the photography business, but I wasn't working at the startup that I started. I kind of just pushed that aside and basically said I want to go in a different direction. Mainly because that startup business is such a niche market in the sense that heli skiing is expensive, kiteboarding is expensive. There's a lot of headwinds that could be unforeseen. Like, look at COVID right now. Like, that business is shut down. Like, no one's flying, no one's going anywhere. Just in terms of a recession, like, people don't have the money to go heli skiing, right?
Also has a steep entry tag.
Yep, barrier to entry. I mean, there's a lot of things. So great experience. It was a lot of fun, but I just shifted my focus. And so I built my photography business and started trading crypto and really kind of learning the space. So from 2017 till now, it's been primarily those two focuses with some side businesses, but like that's primarily it. And so, yeah, who is ISO? Man, I wish I could tell you that I was just, a guy in his mid-30s who trades crypto, but it goes a lot deeper than that. And
I think that's the best intro to crypto I ever heard.
It's impossible for me to say it quickly because it's just, I've often thought about writing a book, but I'm like, who would care? But to me, it's just, and to my friends who all have kind of taken regular paths, they almost live vicariously through me at times, but they're also, everyone's always curious. And so, yeah, that's who ISO is, or Trip. It's been an incredible journey. It's been really fun. And, I wouldn't have gotten into crypto if I hadn't have done all those things. And so I think that is really the interesting and cool thing about all of this.
Thanks, man. That's a really neat intro.
Sure. If everyone can, if you guys keep track of it.
Switching gears now, man. Has your experience as an energy analyst helped you as a trader, and how so?
Yeah. So, I get asked this a lot. I think there are a couple components of just me being in financial services prior to this, particularly the energy space. And I would say that when I was in research, it taught me a lot about how to look for value and to read through the BS, right? Because you're on these conference calls with companies and management, and they're giving you these press releases, and your job as an analyst is to be a skeptic. So you have to be a natural skeptic. So I'm kind of that in life. So when someone presents something to me, I'm always going to have some sort of questions about the validity of it or if it's true, because I just don't take things at face value. And so that, to me, as just working in, as an analyst, that's just something that I think has always stayed with me. So I think it's important when looking at markets, right? Especially like the ICO thing. Like, to me, I was just like, this is a joke, but we can make money during it. But I mean, really, this is a complete joke, because I've looked at real companies, looked at valuations, understand what drives earnings, and there was just absolutely none of that in altcoins that were popping up. But doesn't mean that you can't trade it and make money off it. You just have to have a realistic approach to, okay, this doesn't last forever. And so just being an analyst in that regard has taught me to be a skeptic and realize that good things don't last forever. And so just pay attention to that. And then I think the energy aspect of it is, because I did so much on E&P, exploration and production companies, and looking at price to NAV, price to net asset value models of these energy companies, and looking at things like break-even costs. And this is all based on a commodity, oil, or whether it's a natural gas liquid, or whatever company you're looking at, that the thing that they're extracting is going to be dictating the earnings. And so I've kind of looked at the Bitcoin space similar in terms of the mining industry, as like Bitcoin as a break-even cost, and how the miners need to be profitable at certain prices and why. And so on the surface, that's really a lot of how the energy, I think, is translated into the crypto space. So it's a combo of just being a natural skeptic, and then kind of the break-even model, in the sense of this mining versus like an exploration production company, and the commodity being either oil, natural gas, or in this case, Bitcoin.
Can you walk us through your trading go-to strategy and style?
Sure. So the trading strategy and style has evolved over time. I've always been someone that has found technical analysis interesting. I mean, I was always looking at charts, even as a fundamental analyst doing equity research. A lot of the analysts, never looked at charts, but I looked at charts a lot because it helped me communicate to my sales force more, right? Salesforce is calling you all the time, asking for data points about the company, or how can I pitch this to my client so I can get trading revenues and make money off of it. And so I started to use a lot of the fundamental research and technicals alongside of it, and make calls based on charts and fundamentals. And so that just helped me relate to the Salesforce a bit more, whether they used it or not. It just gave me a deeper connection with them. So as I've gotten into crypto, I was already a chart guy, but I also had the fundamental side of it. So when I look at this space, and I only really trade Bitcoin, that's just because I think it's the only one that matters to me, really. I take a fundamental approach from a macro view. How does Bitcoin fit into this macro picture, right? Because it is on the big stage now. Whether it's trading with the S&P, whether it's trading with gold, there are pockets of correlations. And so I often look for those. So fundamentals, I look at Bitcoin in the macro picture. Technicals, I use a really basic high time frame support and resistance approach. I think less is more. Just keep it simple. Looking at weekly and daily charts and identifying key levels. So very price action based. I find volume to be really important on a high time frame. I think, as we can see kind of right now what Bitcoin is doing, is this argument of accumulation or distribution. And if we look at the sell volume versus the buy volume, like, it's kind of obvious to me that the sellers are in control. And then if I'm using SR and volume, I combine a lot with Fibonacci. I think the Fibonacci levels are nice confluence because they tend to match up with those high time frame SR levels. So as a trader, I start with a basic support and resistance approach, and then I look for confluence around Fibonacci. And then I'll layer in things like TD because I've always used TD, and I think Tom DeMark has a good system. Whether people like it or not, it's been really good to me. So on a basic level, the technicals are SR, Fibonacci, and TD. And then more recently, I've gotten into the sentiment analysis. And so you're looking at sentiment and you're looking at, things like funding or the cumulative long short deltas or longs in the markets or shorts in the market. Maybe it's a futures basis, contango, backwardation. All these little tools, I call them, help for, again, points of confluence, right? So the goal is to figure out what is really going on in the market. And to me, it's just a conversation between buyers and sellers. You need to figure out what party is maybe getting off sides and who's in control. And I think you start with SR and then you layer on the sentiment, and then maybe you layer on some of the fundamentals from a macro standpoint that gives you maybe more conviction or bias directionally of where the capital flows are going to go. And so to me, my trading style is a combination of a lot of things. Now, I also use things like liquidation levels because to me that is, as a leverage trader and, looking at some of the price action in Bitcoin during these range bound or consolidation periods, there's a lot of high leverage traders in this game, and you can just see that price is wiping them out. I mean, today the price went up to 9,900 and dropped down to 9,450 in a single candle. And so that was just like liquidations across the board. And I do believe that there are larger forces, in control, and they are trying to take those players out, right? It's all about the path of least resistance. And so the liquidation levels and these charts that I post and a lot of things that you see on Twitter now are, again, points of confluence, but also just help me to understand why price goes to certain areas. So a bit of a long-winded answer, and it's evolved over time, but there's not one thing that I look at. It's constantly evolving, but there are a lot of things I kind of have in my toolbox that I'm always looking at to see if one of them is going to help me to determine my bias or conviction level in either direction.
Do you think you could automate your trading strategy? So maybe you could focus on other endeavors, or you just love the nitty gritty of trading?
So people have asked me that a lot, and I look at a lot of people in this space, and it's interesting because they're so tech savvy. It's like, hackers turned traders, right? And so they've made these incredible automated strategies that look awesome, and sure, it would be great. Maybe I could go take more pictures or go fishing or go surfing. I do think that there are ways to automate, the liquidation level type strategies, but a lot of my approach is discretionary, and a lot of it is based on my kind of past work experience and my gut feeling about things after I've kind of looked at all the things that I think are important and then come up with a thesis based on all the components I kind of just described. And I think that is not something that you can automate. Sure, there might be a portion of it that you can automate, but if you look at money managers and hedge funds and why are they getting paid performance fees? Well, it's not so much they're algorithmic traders, it's because those guys are pros in their own right and they know how to read the market and they can adapt to certain situations. And so I view myself more as a discretionary trader. And the reason is because I kind of am piecing a lot of different things together to solve that puzzle. And it's not always the same. And I'm not always right, but managing your risks throughout it and having a conviction and an idea, it's the same thing as developing a investment thesis for an energy company when you're in research, right? Is it a buy, sell, or a hold? And what are your projected earnings, and what are the pros and cons, and what's supporting your thesis? So a trade idea to me is no different, and it's just different components that you're putting together. But automating it's just not something that I've even thought about, because I don't have any real understanding of how something like that would work. People have approached me to do it. To be honest, I just have too many other things going on right now, but maybe some point in the future, it would be interesting to kind of test out that strategy, because it definitely would free up a lot of screen time. Crypto is 24/7. It's, it's not always great that it's 24/7, but I can see how automating something would, make it a bit more easier, just carrying on with your everyday life, not having to worry about what Bitcoin's doing.
Yeah, exactly. I would pay to use it.
Well,
No
that's
doubt.
good to know.
This episode is brought to you by PrimeXBT, the exchange that makes possible to trade with leverage on legacy markets from a single Bitcoin-based account. What exchange do you use to trade?
I've
And
used a lot of
why?
them. Yeah, so I've used Bitmex for a while.
You still use Bitmex, the scam exchange?
No, I don't use Bitmex anymore. I use Bybit. Really simple reasons. My friend works there. I've developed a really good relationship with him over time. We've worked on some things, and I just kind of like their interface, and liquidity is fine for me. And they have an app, right? So it's just a convenience factor. And there's just,
You mean the mobile app?
yep, there's not really too many issues with Bybit that I've seen, whereas kind of look at some other exchanges and they've had some issues. So I've just been using Bybit. It's been good to me. And yeah, that's where I'm trading mainly. And again, I have friends there who work there. So a bit of supporting them as well.
Yeah, I also use Bybit.
Yeah, it's I think it's taken some market share. I think the market share of this kind of XBT leverage product, these derivatives exchanges, has definitely been kind of spread out as more have come into the market. And obviously Bitmex was the main one, but look at FTX, you look at Binance, you look at Bybit, you look at Deribit, some other weird ones that I don't really know about. A lot pop up, but no, the market is kind of
Expanding?
being fragmented, and there's more players, which it's good, right? It's, other options for people. And so I think the most liquidity is probably still on Bitmex, but I look at Bitmex. I look at all the data on Bitmex. I have the order book up all day long. I chart on it. I just trade on Bybit.
Now, unfortunately, it's important to have that data to use it to trade it daily, but to trade it there, it's another whole game.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at recent price action when price went to 8,600, I mean,
Yeah, I saw that. Also, the dip today, that dart mall.
right, it went probably $150 lower than any other exchange. Um, it's it's riskier to trade there, I would say, especially if you're not at your screen or something and you have like limit orders sitting there. I mean, that wick to 8,600, the other exchanges went to 9,300. So like, if you had a resting order to get filled at like 92 or something, like that is not good.
Not at all.
Right.
On
I mean,
that
I remember
subject,
I went, I had a short at, uh, on that, and I was short from, man,
10K?
yeah, I think it was 10,400. Yeah, it was that crazy. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
filled like $40 from the top. There was a liquidation up there. I marketed in, and I was like, okay, maybe I shorted the top here. I don't know, but I'm expecting it to go down to like 90. I think it was like 9,800 or something like that, maybe 9,700. I forget. I remember I was at my house because it was the next day, and I was going outside to fill like my bird feeder. So I have a yard. And I just a lot of bird feeders because they're fun to take pictures of these birds, and they're fascinating to watch. I sit out there, eat my breakfast, watch these guys. So I went out there to fill them, and I come back and I had to look at my screen twice because the price had dropped so fast, so quick, and I was just shocked. And I looked, and I had resting orders on Bybit, at, at I think like 9,400 or something. Yeah, and I looked at the Bitmex wick, and it was 8,600, and I was like, dude, there's a chance that these just got liquidated. But Bybit only went to like 9,350, I think, or something like that. And so it's in those instances where I look at Bitmex and I'm just like, there's just a lot of risk dealing with trading on this exchange. And
Adding to that point, what do you think about that crash on March 13 on Bitmex?
I don't
That's the
have
saddest story of this year, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything against Bitmex. I just think that the volatility on there is really crazy. I mean, we saw it again today, and they are orchestrated moves, and the how exaggerated those moves are just make it really difficult to one chart price and deal with kind of the swings. But I don't know if it was a malicious act. Like if you look, like Coinbase goes down a fair amount, like Bitmex has these crazy wicks. Like, is it someone or an entity like taking advantage of inefficiencies in the system? I don't know. I mean, the fact that the price almost went to zero and they had to turn the exchange off, that's like they created their own circuit breaker in itself. Is it normal market behavior? Look, the whole crash during that because of COVID and de-risking and deleveraging across the board, not just in Bitcoin. I mean, S&P, like straight up all asset classes. That's not normal market behavior because that's a black swan event. And so, you know, it was a one-time circumstance, and it's unfortunate for anyone who got liquidated or was a victim from that. But it's kind of also one of the things that people just have to deal with in crypto, in the sense of like the infrastructure is not fully there compared to traditional markets. Like there are serious liquidity games being played here, and it's still a bit of the Wild West. So normal for crypto, it's like it's almost an oxymoron. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Do you think somehow this could have been avoided specifically on Bitmex, which is mainly the driver of whole Bitcoin price overall?
System overload, basically, right? Again, it was like a black swan event. How are you? It's tough to deal with those circumstances, but it was only one exchange that actually really like took the brunt of it. So hopefully they figure it out and put a solution together to try to avoid these things, because it's kind of a turnoff to the space, right? And it's all about security and keeping funds on the exchange. And if we want it to grow and people to invest in this and take it seriously, like we need to kind of figure out all this stuff that's going on during these instances, right? Because people probably look at price action today or last week and they're like,
the fuck is this?
Yeah, this is crazy. And that's part of the allure of it, but it's just, yeah, especially the weekend stuff, right? Like people come back and they look at it and they're like, what did the price do over the weekend? Like, and then you start the week and you get all the CME gaps and all these fun things. And I just wonder what some of these traditional investors are saying about the space and looking at it. So it's just, volatility is incredible, but is it investable at this point still?
Yeah, the saddest part is that Bitmex is used as pricing indexes in legacy. So if it affects us, imagine how we're being looked upon on legacy markets.
Right.
It's like a joke.
Yeah. But if you look at the stock market now, people might say that's a joke too. So it all comes full circle. I mean, if you look at some of these stocks that are trading like altcoins, it's incredible. I'd say
Yeah.
for any trader, the volatility has just been incredible. So
Well,
traders like volatility.
2020 has been something out of the ordinary completely.
Yeah, it's like a
Cannot compare
Hollywood
any
movie.
year. Yeah.
It's kind of scary. I don't really know what's going to happen.
Changing a bit of subjects within crypto here. Why do you
Sure.
rarely trade altcoins?
They're too hard to keep track of. You know, if I'm going to trade one asset or two assets, I mean, I look at Ethereum. I don't really trade that much. It's kind of like being sector specific, right? You want to be a specialist in that regard. And if I look at it that way, I want to trade the most liquid asset that has the best chance of surviving. I don't really think any all these altcoins. I'm not sure what the future of this thing is. The altcoin to me is just something that is a vehicle to gain more Bitcoin, right? That's all it is to me, and that's kind of how they trade, to be honest. So if I can just trade leverage Bitcoin and get more Bitcoin and not worry about some weird fundamental roadmap or whale who has a ton of the supply of this coin that can easily just, I mean, look at the stuff that happened with Matic. Like, like that, I don't want to be a part of that. I mean, I already got enough Darth Mauls with Bitcoin. So I just really care about the one asset that I think is going to survive, the one that I study the most. I understand the price action of Bitcoin for the most part.
Best
Because
liquidity.
yeah, it's just it's on the CME. Like if it's going to be a macro asset class, I want to be a master of that asset. Altcoins to me are I don't the 2017 2018 altcoin market and bubble that happened. It's just I don't see it ever happening again. I know people disagree with that, but the regulatory concerns around it, you know, retail got insanely burned. Okay, they don't want to get burned twice, and liquidity has been kind of broken up. Right, everyone was trading on Binance. Everyone was trading on Binance. That's where kind of liquidity was, and now it's all over the place. And so there's just a lot of problems with the altcoin market that I don't really want to deal with, and there's too many of them. It's like, how do you choose which one that you want to trade? Sure, you can look at a chart, but I'd rather just have 10 Bitcoin charts and be a master of that asset than have a ton of different altcoin charts trying to figure out what's going on.
What would be your most important trading advice?
You need to be patient and disciplined. And the ability to block out the noise and stay true to yourself on your own trade thesis and the conviction that you have with not listening to anyone else is a skill that takes a lot of time to acquire, but it's probably one of the best ones that you can master, right? I mean, if you look at crypto Twitter, like it's, and just this space, because it's so, such a social aspect to it, like this just doesn't exist in traditional markets, which is fascinating to me. But, you know, you could post a call on Twitter and 10 people might come on your feed and say, no, you're wrong. Or, and they don't even put a chart. It's just like, all right, whatever. Let's block this guy out. Like, or, you know, being in Telegram or Discords and you're seeing all these opinions flying around. It's easy to psych yourself out and trade yourself out of something that you might be in an existing position. So you just need to be true to yourself, and it requires patience and discipline. And that's probably the best advice versus going into, you know, the specifics of learning the basics. And, you know, because everyone's going to have their own system and their own style, and that comes through time and experience. So once you've developed that, just stick to your game plan, be patient, stay disciplined, especially if you're trading a high time frame. Because if you look at the low time frame chop, you're going to psych yourself out.
Can you share with us what are you currently working on in and out of crypto?
I have my photography business and crypto, so trading at the beginning of the run in 2019. So March, I met a group of people in Crypto Insiders, founded by Zoran, Captain Cole on Twitter, one of my best friends and now business partners. We really just hit it off, liked each other's analysis. I started posting a lot in that group. and have become kind of a big component of the community and kind of help run the Telegram with him and a bunch of other admins. If you look at what we do in there every day, we share trading ideas and we field questions from newer traders. And I do this on Twitter all day. Zoran does this as well. And, we have some other really high quality traders in that group that just genuinely like to help others, because we all started off nowhere, right? We didn't know anything. And so the idea evolved into creating a trading curriculum. And, everyone kind of in this space doesn't like when someone monetizes something. So we thought the best way to do it was to create a trading curriculum for what we thought were the most important points of trading that a beginner trader to a professional trader could learn and come up the curve and then become an independent trader, right? So we're going to be launching this very soon. And the idea really evolved from both of our passions to teach the community about all the things that we look at, right? So it just starts off with basic SR, like this price action. What is this conversation between buyers and sellers? Then we look at things like Fibonacci. Then we look at things like Ichimoku, because that's Zoran's bread and butter. And then we dive deeper into market structure, looking at time frame analysis, risk management. What is leverage? Why is it important? How do we use it? Teach people about the derivatives market, all the different financial instruments. And then we get into the more complex things that you see us talk about a lot: sentiment analysis, liquidity theory. And the reason we're doing this is because the inbound that we were getting for the requests, I mean, I have hundreds of direct messages on Twitter from people, whether they're saying, thanks so much, you've helped me learn how to look at the market differently, or you've helped me make money, or are you doing a course? Like, this was before we even started. Are you doing any formal education? And so it was just got to the point where the market was there, and now we needed to create a product. And so the product is now created, and it's really unique, because when you start a business, you often have a product that you need to look for a market. And in this case, the market actually made us create a product. And from everything I've done in my career of all these startups, like, that's never been the case. And Zoran and I have been working on this for the last 7 months, I think, right? And it's evolved over time, and it's been an incredible passion project, and we're excited to share it and give back to the crypto insiders community. And you can see that they genuinely appreciate all this stuff too. And so now we're just delivering a more structured product to the people that we spend time with all day long. And eventually, people on Twitter will find out about it. But it's been really cool how our kind of business idea has evolved from newsletter consulting into educational material. And again, I have tapped into my creative career history, and I'm editing all this in Premiere Pro, created a logo, After Effects design. Every video is animated. We have our intros, outros. There are videos of Zoran and I talking to the would-be students. And there's also conversations of us just talking about how we look at price, and just giving a glimpse into kind of how we look at the markets, and that we're just normal guys and that everyone can do this. And we're just trying to make it as authentic as possible and relatable. And so that's the approach that we wanted to do. And it's called Tools of the Trade, because, we both look at this trading concept as, it's a puzzle we're trying to figure out, and you have a lot of tools to help you figure it out. And so we want to just give the best overview of the things that we like to use to a newer trader, or even a more advanced trader, as we get into, some of the other courses. It's 4 courses, so it's a curriculum. And, there's over 14 hours of video content, and it's been an insane amount of work to do it. But that's really what I've been focusing a lot of my time on. And, it's a really interesting time to launch something like this because of COVID. And I think people are taking up new hobbies or they're looking to learn new things. I'd say there's a lot of interest in Bitcoin right now, crypto space, as well as traditional markets. And a lot of the stuff that we talk about can be applied to traditional markets. It doesn't necessarily have to be crypto. Price action, volume, market structure, time frame analysis, maybe not liquidity theory as much because of the data sets we have, but the trader's mindset, risk management, all these things can be applied elsewhere. And so that's what I've been spending a lot of time working on within the crypto space. And that's one of the reasons that I kind of sidelined the business with my brother and went in this direction, because it was the market was there and we just needed to build a product. And I'll say, of all the startups that I've worked at and all the people that I've worked with, it's hard to find someone that works at your pace and understands your vision. And Zoran is works at my pace, if not faster. I mean, he's one of the more mature, mid 20-year-old guys that I've ever met. And so it's been a pleasure to work with him. I think that's why we've made so much headway in this time, because we just work all day long on this, and it's driven out of passion to give back. We both like to teach, and the entrepreneurial nature of both of us, and in the startup world, and I think just the environment as well. It's good to capitalize on that. So yeah, this community has never ceased to amaze me in who you meet and who you come across. And the funniest thing is I've never met the guy in real life. Video chat all day long. But when this is all over, definitely going to have a bunch of White Claws with him.
No doubt. Really happy for you guys that you guys finally landing these courses. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, even if you've been trading for a long time, there's going to be a piece of information that you'll find useful, or maybe you haven't maybe necessarily picked up on. I mean, I'm not doing anything that's rocket science. A lot of it is just basic market structure, support and resistance, and all these other things are points of confluence, right? It's just layering in things that are giving you more conviction and bias to your direction. And I'm very vocal on Twitter sometimes, and the reason is because I've looked at all these things and I've developed a very strong trade thesis around it. And a lot of it has served us pretty well. And so it's cool to see people reach out and feel the same way, and that they're learning and you're helping them. Because I remember, when I first started off, I didn't know anything. You're on YouTube, you're watching stuff. I mean, I remember I found a guy on YouTube. I hit him up on the side. I was like, I'll pay you some cash on the side if we do some one-on-one lessons, if you teach me about Fibonacci, because I didn't really know that much about Fibonacci. So, well, now it's an incredible skill that I have, and that was a good investment. So, it's trading is interesting in the sense that there's so many things out there. So if you can help narrow down and create a curriculum for people that they could build a system out of on their own by piecing together maybe the different things that we're trying to teach them, and they come up with it on their own, right? The tools of the trade. It's a little play on word there. Then maybe that's going to set them up for them to be a successful trader. So I've seen a lot of people in Crypto Insiders come full circle, and almost like the student is becoming the teacher. These guys are snipers when it comes to hitting these levels and getting these positions filled. So that's cool. It's kind of just snowballed into its own entity, kind of growing in itself.
What is your outlook for next year for the US economy and Bitcoin, post-COVID, plus riots, plus elections?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. It's scary to think of it. The US economy, I mean, so there's the economy and there's the stock market. And, the biggest decoupling we've seen is the economy from the market. And so, next year, it's tough to kind of put a price target on any of this. I mean, the economy is in trouble. Okay, there's just no way around it. And there's a couple reasons. Because if you think about the amount of small businesses and people that work on contract work and are in cities and rely on the consumer, well, that's kind of gone away, like completely right now. And so you can't sit there and say that there's going to be growth, right? Like it's just the recession is looming. I think there was a data point like we already started it today that I read. And so the economy, it's a very scary thing to think about because I think that there's a real issue with cities being back up and running and businesses really getting back into gear. So if we look at New York City, I mean, okay, here we have this COVID wave and everything shuts down, and now there's riots and looting. And so you have this, when it rains, it pours. And so businesses were probably supposed to kind of get back up and running. And now there's this social and political unrest, and the racial tensions within the US are extremely high. And it's insanely sad to think about. But it's just not an environment where it's going to go away very quickly. And so that's not just New York City, that's all over the country. And so there's this almost rebuilding process that's going to have to happen. And one of them is the mindset of the individual. Okay, when is it like fine to go back into a bar in New York City and I'm not paranoid about COVID? Well, that's going to take a long time, right? Because there's the fear of the second wave. I think, people's mentality about life has completely changed, and it might take a while for it to ever get back to normal. And normal is such a scary word in this instance. So the economy, I think, is in a lot of trouble, and whether or not the stock market agrees with that, which it doesn't. How long that's going to last remains to be seen. Bitcoin, I think it's in a really precarious spot right now. You have this group of people who are saying it's going to go up because the Fed is printing, unlimited money, and Bitcoin does well in chaos and all these things. But I'm not in the camp of necessarily like believing all of that entirely. If I just look at the Bitcoin chart and I look at kind of what's going on, it looks like it could go down and go through another big accumulation phase. And maybe that's because the US stock market's going to crash and maybe it's coming to a peak. I don't know. I don't try to think too much about Bitcoin in relation to what is going on with COVID riots and the economy right now. It's kind of in its own little space right now. Next year, Bitcoin, it could come out on top and go to all-time highs. It's too hard to say. It's not something that I really like to try to predict. I just trade the chart and see what looks like it's going to happen. Now, the elections, I mean, Joe Biden has had zero airtime, and Trump is just a scary individual. But, there is a chance that guy gets reelected because he is kind of spinning the story with China being the problem with coronavirus, communism, giving checks to Americans. I mean, most of the people who voted for him, it's, I could see the guy getting reelected again, which is scary. Riots, I don't know. I can't even look at the footage anymore. It's just depressing. I'm kind of out here in the suburbs in my own little world, glad I'm not living in a city, and just observing because it's sad to look at America right now and just see like what's happening. And it's not the place I grew up. It's not the place that I would want to have any children grow up at this point. So I hope things start to resolve soon, but I'm not holding my breath just because I think there's some serious damage done right now, and it comes from both sides, obviously. But these things don't get resolved very quickly. And so my outlook is a bit unknown. It's just grim across the board.
And the elections, well, it's a coin toss. Like right now, everything could affect the elections.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the riots, they're now going on around the world. It's not just the U.S.
I think you need another White Claw, man.
Yeah, I just finished it.
Many thanks, Trip, for your time. Really cool having to finally talk to you and have you on Point Blank. Can you tell us where we can find you?
Yeah, so crypto_ISO on Twitter, and then Crypto Insiders Telegram, which is the one that Zorn and I help run. So that's where I hang out the most.
Thanks for listening. Until next time, peace. This episode was brought to you by PrimeXBT, the exchange where you can trade without KYC on legacy markets with your Bitcoin. You can trade commodities like gold, silver, oil, even indexes and forex. Join now and get a 50% bonus on top of your deposit for trading at u.primexbt.com/Panama.